All right, everyone. Thank you for your flexibility and moving from place to place and starting at a different time. But we're very, very happy to have with us tonight one of the most remarkable scholars I've ever met in my life, and remarkable human beings. Joseph Prabhu is one of those people who seemed destined to serve as as one of those mediators between cultures and between philosophical and religious and cultural traditions, like Thomas Merton or Father Bede Griffiths or Raymond Panikar. And you'll see from his biography why I'm saying this. Born in India, Catholic, going to Jesuit high school, and then in India, and then University of Delhi, where he majored in economics, and then the karma took hold and somehow started moving things, and then like studying philosophy in Heidelberg, and then Cambridge University, then going to Boston University, and getting his degree there under John Findlay, the great Hegelian Neoplatonist, and now now at this point, many years, probably over 30 years at this point, professor of philosophy at Cal State Los Angeles, but at the same time constantly visiting scholar, professor at other institutions like the University of Chicago, at Harvard. He's was the program chair for the World Parliament of Religions, or the Parliament of the World's Religions, the last one. He's been the president of the Society for Comparative Philosophy and the International Society of for Asian and Comparative Philosophy. All that gives you a sense for the background and the range. But let me say something about his our personal connection and that background. I first heard of him a quarter of a century ago. Robert McDermott and I had just finished we had just met ourselves at Esalen at the Revisioning Philosophy Conference that Lawrence Rockefeller and Esalen had sponsored, and that was a 3-year sequence of conferences. But we had just had the very first one, and many scholars of really world stature not only in philosophy, but in religious studies and sociology, and people like Robert Bellah and Jerry Needleman and Houston Smith, John McDermott, Robert's older brother, Brian Swim, so were there. And at the end of it, we were thinking of we were looking for people who were restless with the state of philosophy as it was then, in the academic world. Revisioning philosophy, you can see, gets its title from Hillman's Revisioning Psychology, and in some sense, we're seeking the same kind of transformation. And someone mentioned a review that I would want to read by this scholar named Joseph Prabhu. And I read it. It was in the AAR journal, I believe, American Academy of Religion journal, and it was this spectacularly effective critical review of Mark Taylor's book Erring towards a postmodern atheology. And one could not but be overwhelmed by, in this very relatively short review, probably 3 pages long, my memory serves me correctly. The wit, the erudition, the controlled force, that the controlled sort of intellectual and emotional force that demolished the skeptical opponent on behalf of a more robust spirituality, had such a was so attractive and was so remarkable to me and to others. We wanted to invite him on the spot to the next gathering, and I think it came up through Big Sur, where we were living at that time. That still would have been in probably later in '87, and ever since, Joseph and I have been fast friends. And Robert as well, then meeting him at the next one. And we're honored to know this person who now is, he's got a book on, he's already brought out a book, edited a book on Raymond Panikkar, and another one on ethics in India, was it Hindu ethics?
Indian ethics.
Indian ethics. And then now has a book on Gandhi coming out this year, on a book on Hegel in India coming out next year. I believe you had a lot to do with the Gifford lectures, editing the Gifford lectures of Raymond Panikkar that recently came out. So he knows everyone from on a personal basis, from Gadamer to Thomas Kuhn, and you'll get a sense for this intimacy with the postmodern intellectual scene, yet at the same time a social engagement, a spiritual committedness, and a range of intellectual and cultural reference that is scarcely equaled by anyone I know. So, on that understated note, let me welcome Joseph Prabhu.
Thank you, Rick. You're the kind of person my mother loves. But quite seriously, I mean, it's always a humbling experience to be introduced by Rick, because it reminds me constantly of the person that I still have to be and strive to be. As I say, that's always, for someone who was Jesuit trained, always a good thing to have, some goal to move towards. But I want to say that I am really very pleased to be back. It's a homecoming. I was telling Robert this earlier, and it's been too long since I've been at CIS. I taught here in '96, '97 in the PCC program, and also in philosophy and religion. And it was certainly one of the most stimulating experiences I had, because for me, who teaches a more traditional set of students, either at California State University, which is my main university in Los Angeles, or at the University of Chicago, where I've been teaching of late. What was different about PCC students and the students from CIS was that they brought life experiences, either from careers or from past lives, talking about karma, and gave my more abstract reflections a real experiential base against which to test and to measure my views. And I cherished that, and I have to say I missed that. And so I am very pleased to be back, as Robert and I were discussing, now that my commitments are perhaps just a shade lighter. I hope to come back sort of more frequently to CIS. Let me, because we don't have much time, come straight to the topic of this evening. And I want to sketch for you a few global phenomena, and then come to Gandhi. So think about the fall of the Berlin Wall. I mean, these are some of the major political and historical events of our time. The fall of the Berlin Wall in 1989, the ending of apartheid in South Africa in 1991, the toppling of Pinochet in Chile, the toppling of Slobodan Milosevic in Serbia. Certainly an extraordinary event in American life, namely the rise and then the election in 2008 of Barack Obama, influenced as he was by the civil rights movement. So the civil rights movement sort of culminating in Barack Obama. And then finally, I mean, I could go on, but the thread will be clear. The so-called Velvet Revolutions that brought about a change in East European governments shortly after 1989 and the fall of the Berlin Wall, when Czechoslovakia, Poland, Hungary, Romania all saw changes of governments. Certainly, I think these would count as some of the most significant events of our time. But what they have in common is the idea that an age-old assumption that has guided our thinking as a species, namely that national security requires war and violence to prop it up, and that freedom and independence struggles could only be achieved through violence and the force of arms. These events that I've just cited negate that. They show the lie in that particular assumption. And while we are still a long way away from espousing the idea of civil resistance and people power as a way of life and as a foreign policy, still I think these successes point in that direction. Clearly, the United States has unfortunately not followed that policy. But what we see now in Tunisia and in Egypt, and now spreading to other parts of the Middle East, shows again the power of civil resistance and of nonviolent civilian movements. As you probably know, one of the great pioneers of this was Mahatma Gandhi, actually known as Mohandas Karamchand Gandhi, given the title of the great soul by the poet Rabindranath Tagore, because he saw that if the people organized and had a moral conviction that their power of love and persuasion could, whatever the odds, overcome resistance and overcome oppression. It was Gandhi who conceived of this idea, and Martin Luther King was very perceptibly one of those who picked this up, because King himself came